Welcome to the newest edition of the Giants Huddle podcast. John Schmeelk with you. Today we're joined by former Giant Mathias Kiwanuka, who is doing some great stuff post-career. We'll talk about that and, of course, some of the stuff he did while he was a member of the Giants as well. But first, a reminder, you can find the Giants Huddle podcast on the Giants Podcast Network, which you can find at the Giants mobile app at giants.com/podcast and on all your favorite podcast platforms. Now we're joined by our guest. You know him as Mathias Kiwanuka. We used to call him Kiwi up here. He's down in Florida now, enjoying his retirement. Kiwi, you got Schmeelk up here in your old stomping grounds in central northern New Jersey. How's life, man? How you doing?
Life is good. Life is good. This is around the time of year that I do miss being in New York after the snow starts to melt and people start coming out of hibernation. And then it gets hot down here. So you trade the winters for the summers down here. But no, I do miss it. I'm good, though. Life is good. No complaints here. Just been hanging out down here in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, we've had 70 degrees for a good week or so here. Guys are starting to roll in for OTAs. How much do you miss the off-season training, though? I'm guessing that probably not as much.
You'd be surprised. Like, the farther you get away from the game, the less you think about the pain and all that kind of stuff. And you do think about like those first couple of days when you're walking back in and you're seeing all the guys and catching up. That stuff was always fun, like it's always, it was always difficult to get, back into top shape. But by the time you get done with OTAs, you're feeling good. You're ready to go. You got another break coming before mini camp. And so, yeah, I do miss it, miss being around there. I mean, I've played for the Giants my entire career, so that's all I know. And I know how good of an organization it is.
Well, we certainly miss you up here, and we'll talk a lot about your time with the Giants. But Kiwi, first, let's talk about what you're doing now. You've got invested and involved in Smile Train. Talk about why that's important to you and what it is you're doing and what the organization does to help people.
So why it's important to me is, when I was still playing, I had a lot of, philanthropic aspirations, whatever you want to call it. And, so I went back to Uganda. We built a well and we added on a school building to the school in Conge, where my mom is from. And, after you retire, you realize that you can't do it all alone. You can't change the world by yourself. You're going to need some help. So I linked up with a couple of organizations, first All-Star Smiles down here, and then the Water Trust up in New York. And then recently I was invited to join the board of the Smile Train. And it's by far the biggest, most powerful organization that I've been a part of. And, I'm just very proud to be a part, very humbled and very appreciative of the opportunity, to go back, not just to Uganda, but to go to every country pretty much. I mean, they're in 70 different countries, or we're in 70 different countries. Over 1.5 million clefts have been fixed due to the Smile Train's activity. And, it just continues to grow.
I believe the Tisch family is involved in a lot of that too, right? Helping with the cleft issues there. Just talk about how Smile Train helps that and, why what they do is so important with some of those cleft surgeries to fix some of those problems they have. From where you're from in Africa and how they're really helping the people down there.
So one of the unique things about it is that cleft palates have been mostly eradicated in the United States, because when it happens, it's fixed, really early on. And a lot of people walk around and you'd have no idea that was something that they were born with. Unfortunately, the rest of the world just doesn't have the capability, just doesn't have the technology or the resources to do so. So there are a lot of kids who are struggling with it, with something that, they shouldn't be, in my opinion. What makes Smile Train unique is that we don't just go into a country, set up shop, take pictures, and then leave. We actually go into the community and teach those doctors and give them support so that they can continue treating after we've left. That was the part that intrigued me the most. This isn't just a photo op opportunity. No, you're going in and you're going to be able to revisit these locations and see the progress going forward. So it just continues to grow and to grow over the course of years. And, the work that they had already done was amazing. They gave me an opportunity to go specifically back to Uganda, and we're still in the process of planning that trip. We were hoping to go in June, but with COVID restrictions and all that, we pushed it back. Hopefully by December, that's the next target date. Hopefully by December we'll be in Uganda. So just being able to help people with it's a common issue, but it's just not as serious. It's just not as difficult to deal with in the, first world.
I know your personal story. I know a lot of the fans out there might not. Why do you feel such a connection to Uganda based on your family history?
So the story is, my grandfather was the first prime minister. My father's father was the first prime minister. And my grandfather on my mother's side was a humble teacher in the village. He was actually one of the men who started teaching young women at a time when it was still punishable by law. But he thought it was important enough, and he thought that his children specifically, there are 16 of them, keep in mind, he thought that his children specifically deserved an opportunity to go to school, men and women, boys and girls. So starting with that, and knowing that I have literally hundreds of cousins all over the world, and, me having a platform and the resources to do so, it was just kind of like a no-brainer. I'm one generation removed from being born in the village and having dealt with the same issues that they are. So the way I say it is, I'm no more physically gifted or any more talented, but by the grace of God, I was born in Indianapolis. I got recruited to go to Boston College, and then I played for the New York Giants. And it's an easy lead in a conversation when you show up with a Super Bowl ring or a couple Super Bowl rings to sit and have a conversation. And so I just always felt like, there's something more to my success than just playing football and moving on with my life. I mean, retired life is great, don't get me wrong, but it can drive you crazy if you don't find a cause to get behind.
Absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about your retirement and your causes at the end of the interview, Kiwi. But perfect segue. You got drafted by the Giants in 2006, a first-round pick. They actually traded back, and it's a little continuity here. The Giants, this is the first time they've traded back this year since they picked you back in 2006. What do you remember about that night? Did you think the Giants were going to pick you? What was it like getting the phone call? How'd draft night go for you?
Not at all. I just knew that they weren't going to pick me, to be honest with you. I met with them maybe the shortest of any of the teams that were interested at the combine. I knew they had OC, they had Tuck, they had Strahan. There were just a lot of guys on that team already. So when it came time to get that, here's a funny story. So I'm sitting in the living room with all my family around, the first picks. Back then, it took hours to get from 1 to 32, So we're sitting there, and Miami's on the clock, and I get a call from a Miami number. I pick it up, and I'm thinking, okay, this is it. Turns out it was one of my friends from college who just happened to be calling from a Miami number. So it was a lot of emotions. And then what I do remember is picking up the phone when the Giants were on the clock. Right before the Giants got on the clock, I got a phone call, picked up the phone, and they said, hey, we're going to pick you with the next pick. Here, talk to Coach Coughlin. And I was so excited. I think I hung up on Coughlin. And he had to call me back the second time. But I just remember being in my living room with my entire family and some friends, and just feeling like, it was a culmination of all the hard work that I put into high school and college. I knew I had a lot of work to do. I knew I had a lot ahead of me. I didn't know how much, but I just felt really, really proud and happy that, all that work that I put in, one of my points of pride is from my redshirt freshman year until I went to the Play Ball American weekend as a senior, I didn't miss one practice. I didn't miss one lift. I didn't miss one thing on the sheet. Because you gotta remember, I was 6'6", 195 when I got there. And I remember calling home and telling my mom, like, yo, these guys are 270 pounds. They got like 10% body fat. I messed up. Like, I'm never going to play here. And she encouraged me, and she said, just stick with it. And so I got in the hip pocket of some of the veterans that were there, and they just made space for me. That was kind of how it worked in college, and the same thing in the league. You just keep working, keep grinding. As long as you sharpen your skill set and keep working, people will take notice, and you'll get the opportunities.
It's actually funny you mentioned that. The Giants drafted Ellison Smith in the 4th round this year. He has a similar story. He showed up in Northern Iowa. I think he was 195 pounds. He ended up putting on 55 pounds of muscle while he was there. Obviously, different competition level, but it's amazing what you can do when you put the hard work in. And you mentioned it, kind of, getting in the hip pocket of the vets. That could not have been an easy room to walk into at Giant Stadium. Strahan, he's a lot of things, but my guess is that he was not the easiest on the rookies in that room. And then you got OC and Tuck. What was it like walking in there and not just learning from those guys, but dealing with those guys in a lot of way too?
I mean, I know what the stories and everything come out. You got to keep in mind, I was a first round pick, so I walked in there with a whole boatload of confidence. But yeah, when you walk in, you see great Michael Strahan, and you see all these other guys that have been really successful in their careers. You know, it's jaw dropping. You know, to be honest with you. Another funny story. So it was like the first meeting we had back in the old building when we were down in the basement. And everybody's sitting together. Brandon Jacobs, for some reason, didn't sit with the running backs. He used to sit with the D linemen. And I didn't recognize him at first, but I just saw this 6'5", 230, 60-pound guy. And as we're getting ready to leave, we go into the meeting rooms, and this guy takes a right when everybody else was taking a left, and he goes into the running back room. And I said, that's what an NFL running back is? Like, I was floored by that. I mean, it turns out he was probably the biggest at the time, but I didn't know that. I was like, whoo, you know, I got some more weight to gain if that's what we're going to be hitting against. And but throughout my career, I mean, the guys, we had a really close locker room, we had a really close meeting room. We all did tend to help each other out, and I couldn't have asked for a better group of guys. We're still in contact now. We still joke and laugh about things that happened back then. So I think everything worked out for me just the way that God intended.
We always talk about how, you know, veteran presence can help a young guy come along. Can you give some instances of what those guys taught you and how they, you know, assisted you in becoming the player you eventually became?
One of the biggest helps during my career, especially as I was making the transition from D lineman to linebacker, and one person I think never got enough credit was Antonio Pierce. I mean, he was way more than just a middle linebacker. He's a friend. He was a teacher. He was a guy. He was very confident in his skills. And I used to say, this guy, you could give him 2 seconds of a play to run and stop anywhere in the NFC East, and he could probably tell you what play they're running, which direction they're going, and everything. Like, he just had it. And so he was a guy that taught you, you know, you can go out, you can have fun, and you can hang out, but he was always the first one back in the sauna. He was always in the weight room. He was always sitting there with his notebook out, ready to ask questions. And so, you know, he would help guide me along, like, hey, do this, don't do that, go here, don't do this, you know. And, you know, so guys like that who are just willing to help everybody. Corey Webster is another one. You know, Corey Webster would have meetings at his house down in his basement, and he would teach guys how to watch film. I'm not even talking about like teaching them what the play is. He was just teaching them how to watch film. He bought one of the big computers that they had at the Giants at the time and downloaded all the practice and all film onto it. And he would say, come over, you know, just grab some food, grab some drinks, and we're just going to sit here and I'm going to teach you guys how to watch film. I don't think he explained it as teaching you how to watch film. I think he just said, yo, come over. But at that time, I remember being like, looking back on it, I remember being like, this is that was a really valuable experience. And so it wasn't just in that D-line meeting room. Obviously, you know, the OCU manure is like, he taught me how to back tip the ball, which means keep one piece of your eye on the very back tip of the ball and then trust yourself. You know, he was very big on that. You know, you got to trust yourself. You got to be able to not be afraid to make mistakes. You know, you're going to jump off sides, but if you get 3 sacks in the game, no one's going to care about you jumping off sides. We all know OC was good for a couple of those every week.
Don't tell Coughlin that, man. You think Coughlin wants to know about penalties? Come on, he'd be losing his mind.
I learned from Coughlin that you have to wear high socks during practice. That's what I was. No, I'm joking. Coughlin was great. I'll never say anything bad about him. He's one of the guys that I respect the most in terms of leadership and what it takes to lead a group of men. You got to remember, these are big men with big egos and big pockets. It's not easy to command respect in a room like that. But when you get up there every day, day in and day out, and your message is consistent and you hold everybody accountable, I don't care if you're Michael Strahan pulling in 5 minutes late, or if you're, you know, the second team guy, you know, pulling in 10 minutes late, the punishment is the same. You guys are treated the same. And I think that it had a lot to do with our success. You know, I heard stories from other teams around the league, and, you know, guys would show up halfway through practice or halfway through meetings. I was like, man, that would never fly in New York. Not one time would a guy, first of all, you show up that late, you're not practicing, you might not play. But it was just, there was just always a level of confidence, accountability, and a teaching mentality that permeated the entire room.
Yeah, Tom also taught you high socks at practice and no white socks on the road either. Remember, you can't have the white socks on the road. Big no.
You know what I used to do though? The trick around that one, I used to tell people, you put on the low socks and then you just tape around the top so he can't tell if you have not. I did that for probably about 6 years, and everybody's like, "Yo, Kiwi, how do you get away with that?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Establish your own system." And he would come to me a couple times. And he'd be like, "Do you have high socks under there?" I'm like, "What do you think?"
Did you have like a wake up moment with Coughlin? Because it's funny, you're from Boston College, so I imagine you probably got some stories heading in as to what that was going to be like. But did you have that moment where, maybe as a rookie where Tom found you something doing wrong and you showed up late and you felt the wrath a little bit?
Oh yeah, there was I think it might have been my rookie year, either my first or second year. We were doing some live drills with the offensive linemen. You remember Rich Siebert?
Of course, Richie. Of course, he was the first guy to start a fight at training camp. That Richie Siebert.
Richie was a fiery guy and he loved it. And I remember we were doing a drill. It was a screen pass. It was live. It was a screen pass, and I jumped to get my hands up, and he chucked me out of the air. I mean, he knocked the wind out of me and everything. And as I was going down, I had a memory of what my coach in college had taught me is like, if they kick you out of the air, just bring your foot up. You'll catch them right underneath their chin. And so, it was instinct for me at that point. So I did it. And a scuffle ensued. I mean, everybody was there. Snee was always kind of on both sides of the fence because he was a BC guy. I played with him, but he's also an offensive lineman over there. So I remember him pulling me off and like getting me away. And Coach Coughlin comes up to me and he goes, "Did you kick him in the face?" And he's laughing. He's trying not to laugh, and he just pulls me aside and he's like, "You can't do that, son." And he walked away. And I was like, okay, he's got a little, humanity underneath that tough exterior, because I saw him walk back to the sidelines. He was cracking up laughing. He couldn't believe this rookie just came in and is pulling this kind of stuff already. But so that was pretty early on. And he did talk to me about it after practice, and Rich and I made up and everything like that. But, he's a fighter in his own right, and he knew it was going to get heated, and he loved it.
What was the worst? I hesitate to call rookie hazing, but what was the worst thing that Strahan did to you in that first year or two when you were in that room? Anything fun, jokes, practical jokes, rookie chores, whatever you want to pull out of your bag.
Sticking me with the bill every time, the first rounder comes in. "Oh, you're paying for dinner." That's there's no questions asked. Nah, I don't think we did too much hazing. They didn't haze me too badly. Probably taking all his practice reps.
Well, yeah, but that's because in 2007, he wasn't even there for most of camp, right?
Yeah. He showed up like a couple days before. He went out there and he just played his way into shape, and he was confident that he was going to do it. So, he didn't get on us too bad. Another story about it, I do remember, it was probably around that same year. And, they used to have media come in between, when you're taking a shower and going to your second meetings, right? Mm-hmm. And I just remember he was going after somebody. He was giving it to them. They were giving it back. He was loud. He was boisterous. And we come back in. I think Tuck or somebody asked him, like, "Yo, Stray, why do you entertain that? Why do you go back and forth?" And he had this big smile on his face. And he's like, "Man, I don't care about that." And he's like, "I'm setting this up for after I retire." And that stuck in my mind. Like, looking back on it, I'll never forget it. He was engaging. He was forceful. He went back and forth. He didn't care, but he had a plan back then to be doing what he's doing now. And I think, like, looking back on it, like that was true genius right there.
Oh, always a step ahead, man. No question about it. You mentioned before with Antonio Pierce helping you go to linebacker, and I know you're not looking for sympathy, but I'll be honest, I always felt bad for you, man. You were getting yo-yoed between defensive end and linebacker. Oh, you're going to be a linebacker. Oh, OC's hurt. Now you're going to be a defensive end again. Oh, now you're back to linebacker again. Do you think back and get frustrated sometimes where, like, if they would have just stuck me somewhere and let me play one darn position, maybe I would have been even better?
I tend not to look back and regret, because you got to remember also, I broke my ankle that second year.
Yep.
I had a serious neck injury my fourth year. And I do believe that, God puts you in the position you're supposed to be in. Now, would I have done it again? Absolutely not. I would have played my position and stuck with it. But yeah, so I try not to go back and look back at what if or what could have happened, because God forbid, I could have ended up hurt or doing something else. So I enjoyed it. I got to win 2 Super Bowls. I played with some amazing guys. And but what I will say is there were some moments of frustration. And I remember saying to myself, no one person is supposed to be able to play a 4 technique against Flozell Adams and then cover Deshaun Jackson running across his face. Like, I was like, that's just bad coaching right there. Okay. Like, you can't put one guy into all those positions. But I played all 6 of the front 7 positions during my career. And, I feel like that enabled me to stay around a little bit longer. I was also the right wing on punt my entire career. And so I just felt like the more that I could contribute to the team, the better off we would be. Personally, yeah, it was a sacrifice, but there are so many guys out there whose names you don't know who also sacrificed, guys who gave up millions of dollars to play out of position. So I wasn't the only one. I might just be one of the bigger names that you know.
2007, obviously the team, everyone remember they go win a Super Bowl. You unfortunately broke your leg on November 18th of that year. And that's kind of when, and again, I'm not making the connection here, but then you had the Viking game in there, which was kind of a disaster. I'm sure you remember that. And then the team gets into the playoffs and they start rolling. What was first the frustration level? What was it like from the outside looking in, kind of seeing all that come together?
It's difficult because you have a lot of conflicted emotions. I think I've started 10 games that year, so I was very much a part of the team.
Yeah.
And then it was Shockey and myself and what was it, D Ward. We all had the same injury, so it's really difficult as a player not to be contributing in the big moments when it really counts. And that's why a lot of times when I talk about winning Super Bowls, I talk about the second one. So I had the first one early in my career where I was hurt, the second one later on in my career where, I was playing sparingly. But in between there, I did have some great years. I had some great times. And so I think just being part of those teams that won are the bright spots. But yeah, it's difficult. I just had my 6th surgery on that ankle back last December.
Oh, wow.
So it's a lifelong thing. When you play in the NFL, everybody always asks you, like, how did you make it out? Nobody comes out unscathed. Nobody does. We talk about it all the time. If you play, I did 9 years. I think if you play 5, 6+ years, and sometimes it only takes 2 years, you're going to be dealing with some stuff, and it's a sacrifice that we all make. Obviously, we get compensated for it very well, but you look back on it and you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 Super Bowls, but Kiwi, and I think you'll agree with me, the best Giant team I've ever been around was that 2008 team. You guys were dominant, and we all know what happened at the end. You don't have to get into that if you don't want to. But, I think what the team achieved in 2007 and the way they played in the playoffs, I think that's what you guys were for the whole year in 2008, right? You ran the ball down people's throats. The defense was dominant. What was it like playing on a team that really could just control both sides of the line of scrimmage the way you guys could consistently?
It was just fun. And that part of that success has to be attributed to Coach Coughlin, because he could always find a way to make the sky fall down on Monday when we came out after a win. So every week we were still in that same mode, that same anxious mode of wanting to succeed. But when you walked out there on the field and you saw how big the eyes were across that 50-yard line, we just knew we were going to dominate teams. I knew as soon as Brandon Jacobs got that ball, it was a wrap. I knew we were going to go out there as a D-line and get some sacks and play and win. Obviously, it didn't finish up the way that we wanted it to. We had some tragic issues, but we'll leave that in the past. But it was that's probably the most fun I've had playing football.
Yeah, I've most fun I've had watching it, being around the Giants. It was just a great year. And when something like that comes together, what does it feel like in the meeting rooms, in the locker room, on the field? Is there just a different feeling that's almost impossible to quantify?
You couldn't tell us nothing. There was nothing to be said. Newspaper articles, it didn't matter what was said, who was doubting us, because it just didn't. It went in one ear and out the other. There was absolutely no time to listen to the haters or anything like that. We knew that we had a job to do. We knew that we were going to win. And as long as we executed, we had a lot of great coaches on that staff too. A lot of those coaches are still doing very well for themselves right now. You got to remember that Coughlin coaching tree is a beast right now. So got to give them credit too. But we just enjoyed every minute of it. There was a reason to celebrate. We were laughing. We were joking. Every day you walk in the meeting room and somebody gets up and tells a joke, or we had battle raps in the D-line meeting room. Like it was just a fun time. We worked our asses off. Don't get it twisted. We worked our asses off, but we just had a fun time playing football.
And that was your best year, right? You had 8 sacks that year, 17 quarterback hits. Was that really when you felt like, all right, they're using me the way I need to be used, this is perfect, and everything's clicking for you personally too?
I was hungry. I wanted to get us back there. I was like, listen, I missed the last one. Let's go. Let's go get another one. You know, I really believed in that team. And, you know, the process of getting there is what makes that team, you know, like that's what makes the memory for me. Yeah, we didn't win the big one, but the process in which we went about things, training camp, coming in, laughing and joking during training camp, and then making it all the way through week, 6, 7, like, you know, like without any hiccups. Like it was just fun. You know, it was fun to play ball. And yeah, I felt really good about where I was as a player at that time.
All right, let's go to the Super Bowl in 2011. Kiwi. And boy, you know, people lump 2007 and 2011 together a lot, but to me, the seasons could not be any different in terms of how you guys won games. And I looked it up. You were the 27th ranked defense in the regular season that year, but the 3rd ranked defense in the playoffs. What the heck changed that allowed you guys to turn it on like that when you got to the postseason, where the defense really played so much better in those final set of games as opposed to earlier in the year?
I think we really had enough guys, and that's part of I think why they kept me around so long, is we had enough guys left from that first Super Bowl team that could clearly state the message. Listen, the season is over. Like no matter what we did during the regular season, that is over. Somebody has to come in here, or we have to go there. They have to beat us. We have an opportunity. And then we had guys coming in from other teams who would get up there and give speeches and say, you know, specifically a couple guys, listen, guys, I've been playing in this league for 7, 8 years. I've never been to the playoffs. You guys have won. Like, I want that. So some of the guys who were just coming in were hungry. They came to New York specifically to win a Super Bowl. And I think it just clicked. You know, we had a lot of young guys. I mean, think about a Jaquan Williams. You want to talk about me playing out of position? Think about a linebacker covering deep from, you know, lining up damn near on the line of scrimmage and then running back covering deep balls. There were so many contributing factors to it. But when you get to the playoffs, it's a fresh start. It's a fresh season. You got to get your mind right. And if you have veteran guys who have been in those tough situations before, they can put their arm around the young guys and just tell them, hey, shake it off, let's go. Don't let the last play beat you on the next play. That's what I always used to say. You
know, we talked about 2008, how you guys just ran the ball down people's throats. Well, 2011, it was the Eli Manning show, right? What was it like watching him click with, you know, Victor, Hakeem, all those guys, Mario Manningham on offense, where it was just really an aerial show for a lot of that year?
Yeah, his calm confidence, that smooth walk he had walking out there every week. You just by that time in like my career playing with him, you know, he's the only quarterback I ever played with. By that point, I knew something big was going to happen. I knew it was going to click. I knew at some point he was going to make some big plays in the game. And watching the entire offense as a whole, it was impressive. You know, like whenever we needed it, it seemed like whenever something was missing, somebody came up clutch, somebody came up big. And a lot of that was the growth and maturation of Eli. He was able to not just, you know, get the receivers, but he could get the offensive linemen in position and tell them. It was kind of like watching him really come into his own. I mean, he had already won a Super Bowl, but that wasn't necessarily his team. You know, that was still Strahan. This was his team. There was nobody above him on that team at that time. So I think for him, that's a great, maybe even better than the first one. That was a great victory for him.
What sticks out in your mind about the playoffs? A play, a game, you pick it, that really sticks out, that kind of defined that run for you in the defense?
I think for me, it was the Falcons game. I can't remember who the back was, but I was matched up with him one-on-one in the hole for almost the entire game. And I remember coming out of that game beat up, but for some reason that was the game for me that just said, okay, you know what? I contributed to the win, in this season. I was waiting because I was the big linebacker at that time. So we needed, only certain formations would bring me out on the field. So when I got that opportunity, and maybe it wasn't always sacks or this and that, but to be able to stuff somebody back in the hole consistently over and over and over again, it made me feel good.
How about the Super Bowl against the Patriots? You missed the first one, which obviously was the big one. You beat the undefeated team. But that second one, you get another shot at Tom Brady. We all know Tom Brady wanted a second shot at you guys. He just was joking the other day on a podcast how I don't understand why Giant fans hate me. They're the one team I can't beat. So what was it like getting ready for that game and going up against a guy like Brady, who was dying to beat you guys in that game?
Honestly, I think at that point, we had kind of adopted that mentality, like he's just another guy. If he beats us, we did something wrong. We know how to get to him. We have the formula. We know what to do. Yes, he's going to make plays. There's no doubt about it. He's going to make plays. But at the end of the day, they can only win if we let him beat us. So we took away the threats that he had, and then we just tried to get to him, And so I don't think at that point there really wasn't this whole mystique of Tom Brady. It was just, this is who we got to play and this is what we got to do at that time.
What's the sense for a defensive lineman or a pass rusher when you're hitting the quarterback? What are some of the things you see when you're like, all right, we're starting to get to this dude. We've seen this and this and this, and we know we're affecting him. What are some of the things that you notice that maybe, us watching on TV or even watching a film can't, but you guys can see out there on the field?
The first thing I think I noticed is the uncomfortable, the lack of comfort for that offensive tackle that you're going against. He's got his eyes following you in and out of the huddle. He's trying to figure out if you're lining up against him. Maybe he's already jumped offside, so now he's nervous about what's going to happen. But one of the greatest feelings or the greatest moments is when you hit him with a move. So I would do the stab slap. You stab him, slap that arm, and they fall down, and it's just you and the quarterback. And the quarterback can't see you. His back is turned, and you're just thinking, if he pats that ball one more time, it is a wrap. And so when you beat somebody clean like that, because there's all types of sacks. There's other sacks where it's just like you're just grinding, and somebody else flushes them to you and you wrap them up. Those are great sacks, don't get me wrong. But when you've been working specifically all week to beat one guy and you've established what move you're going to beat him with, you've set up every single move up to that point for that third down in that fourth quarter, and you get that move, you get him to line up the way that you want him to, and you get that perfect move, and it's just you and the quarterback. Now it's just a foot race. That's probably the fastest 10 yards any defensive lineman can run.
Yeah, they always talk about the 10-yard split, right, on the 40-yard dash. That's the 10-yard split on the 40-yard dash right there, man. Yeah. But it's great reminiscing. Talk about Kiwi, kind of, what you're doing now after retirement, how you're keeping yourself busy. I know you could talk more about the Smile Train if you want. Anything else that you're up to and things of that nature.
Yeah, so the Smile Train right now is the thing that I'm most proud of. So since I retired, I started a company called Wandering Wines. We import and distribute wine from all over the world. Right now, we're just in Florida. We have plans to open it up to do online sales and to go national here in the next couple of years. But we've just been steadily growing our base down here in Florida. We have 4 brands. Wandering Wines is a parent brand. We have Peaks and Valleys, which you can find at Capitol Grill. I think down here in Florida, Capitol Grills. We have Keen, which houses a rosé and a sparkling. And then we have Lost Find. It's one that's hard to pronounce. Everybody calls it Lost and Find, but it's Lost Find. And that's more of the one that you'll find. Like if you go to a brewery down here in Florida, you can find it on a menu. And that has kept me extremely busy. Building a business on your own. I didn't do it by myself. I had a great business partner who was successful in his own right and showed me how to develop a business. But building a business, I mean, everything, every little part of it, like there's no part of my business that I haven't done. I've put labels on bottles myself. I put cases of wine in my own truck and drove it. There are times people are like, I just can't believe that a Super Bowl winner is delivering wine, and this is right after I retired. I had a dolly in the back of my truck, but that's how we established our business. We wanted to make sure that we showed growth, and you would say, we could pay somebody to come in here and do this, but it's not going to reflect well on our balance sheet, and we're not going to get the hands-on experience. So now when I bring people in to work for me, you're not going to get anything past me. I know exactly how hard it is. I know exactly what it takes. I know exactly how many hours you spend on the road going from Key Largo to Jensen Beach. And then, I finally got into a place now where, people are coming to us and we sit around and we taste wine and we try it and we decide with the help of we have 3 sommeliers on the staff, and we pick wines to bring in. So that's the fun part, traveling around the world and drinking wine with friends. I think that's what attracted me to it the most, was just, going back and forth to Napa and traveling to Europe and sitting there, having these conversations with professionals, people who are masters at their craft. When you sit with a winemaker and you ask them, what goes into making this wine, it's one of those experiences where somebody can talk for 20, 30 minutes straight, and then they look up and they're like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, no, don't apologize. Like that's where you learn. That's where I've gotten the growth, in the business. And I just enjoy that. And you never know who you're going to run into. You never know who you're going to meet. Some of the most interesting people are sitting in a cafe somewhere having a nice glass of wine. And I've always just been intrigued, like learning people's stories and whatnot. So that's kept me pretty busy. The 2 kids during COVID, 7 and 9, trying to homeschool.
God bless you, sir.
I don't know how teachers do it. I don't know. I honestly don't know. We had to hire a tutor to come in. I can't even lie, because at some point, trying to work 2 different computer screens, and this one's got to start at 9, this one starts at 9:30. And where's your chalkboard? Why aren't you dressed? I was flustered. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for every working parent who did it themselves, and for all the mothers and fathers who stay home by themselves with the children. That's a full-time job, but I do enjoy it. I love watching my kids grow. I've been blessed to have, time to spend with them. So, we're just helping develop their skill sets and watching them grow and watching them discover things and seeing things through the eyes of a child again. It's been amazing.
How much you still keep track of the NFL and the Giants?
Not at all. No, I'm joking. Here's how I watch games, right? And people always ask me, do you still watch football? Yes, I watch football, especially now that my kids are of the age to understand the game.
Sure.
I watch football from a very technical aspect. So if you call me after a game and you want to say, hey, what did you see from this defensive end? I can break it down for you 100%. I can tell you where his foot was supposed to be. Why are his hands on his knees? Why is he looking backwards when he should be looking forward? All those different things. It's almost impossible for me to break my mindset out of watching football the way that I've been trained to watch it. So first thing my eyes go to is the receivers, the split in the backfield, how deep is the quarterback. Then I want to see the stance from the offensive tackle or the interior lineman. Now I'm trying to figure out what defense are we in or what are we playing. And they've done a good job of mixing it up. And then, I watch the defensive linemen, and I watch the outside linebackers, and then I try to put together the whole picture. I don't rewind nearly as much at all. I would rather come on post game and talk about the technical aspect of an individual player than talk about the politics of the sport and of the game and who's doing what. The off the field stuff for me, that's over and done. I enjoy sitting with high school kids and teaching them, okay, listen, this is what you got to do. You can't drop your foot. You can't bucket step. You can't take a step backward if you're trying to go forward. And just those little nuances of the game is what I pay attention to.
And really, that's the important stuff, which is probably, it's funny. I always thought, Q was such a smart guy. I bet you he'd be good on TV, but now I know why you didn't go into TV, because all they do is ask you about that other stuff that really isn't all that important, right? I mean, if you could sit there and break down film on TV, I think it'd be great. But unfortunately, that's not what people like to do, which boggles my mind, to be quite honest with you.
And I always said, I played in the league. I knew what my responsibility is. Nobody outside of that room knew what my responsibility is. When you're in a Spagnuolo defense, what you look like you're supposed to do has nothing to do with what your actual responsibility is. So, you go home, you turn on ESPN, and they want to spot shadow you and circle you and say, oh, this guy was out. No, he wasn't out of position. He was doing exactly what he was told to do. The play just broke down or didn't work. So I also shy away from criticizing players unless I have an intricate detailed understanding of what he is supposed to be doing. So I think when you're the guy who's in the locker room with the team every day, week in, week out, you have a better understanding. You just don't have as big of a platform, to go out there and to critique people. The people who are criticizing these players, oftentimes they're too far removed from the game to really give a good opinion. But it sounds good on TV, looks good, sounds good. It keeps people watching, so they'll keep doing it.
Yeah, I can't say how many times where I would, see somebody do one of their film breakdowns on TV, and then I go and ask the actual assistant coach, is this right? And they're like, no, it's not even close. Not even close. I remember there was a game where we came out of it and they were killing. I forget who it was. And I talked to the assistant coach. It might have even been Jaquan Williams. And like, well, he said Jaquan Williams played really bad. He goes, you know what? Let me tell you something. Jaquan Williams did exactly what we told him to do. And for someone on the outside looking that didn't know his assignment, maybe they thought he played a bad game. We grade him as an A because he did exactly what we told him to do for this particular team against this particular matchup.
He's one of the guys that I point to the most when you talk about playing out of position. I mean, the guy played nickel, he played outside linebacker, he played safety, all in the same game. And he would do it from a similar position. So nobody knew where he was going to be. If you asked the offensive coordinator on the other side, they'd probably have a different story. They say that kid ruined all of our plays, but he never got the credit for it because nobody really truly understood what exactly he was supposed to be doing. You hit it right on the head.
All right, finally, I guess you got to be pretty excited about where the Giants are headed, right? I mean, they're only 6-10 last year, but a new coach in Joe Judge, which, by the way, when you come up here and you spend some time with him, he has Coughlin vibes, dude, up and down, like no joke, like hardcore. You don't want to mess with this dude. And it seems like things are really pointing up here, man.
I know. And I'm looking forward to it. I tell people all the time, just be patient, be patient. It is a very well-run organization. I think that is one of the most important parts. Yes, there have been some tough years, but from top down, from Maras and Tisches all the way down, I do believe that the ship's going to be righted, and I've never lost faith in them. I just understand that, the seasons ebb and flow. It's not always going to be, great seasons, but I do believe we have a good shot this year.
Good luck, safe travels. And just to remind everybody, go to smiletrain.org, working on global health equity, trying to do a lot of work with the cleft surgeries and cleft care out there in Africa, and of course in Kiwi's ancestral home in Uganda. Kiwi, we appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. We'll see you up here soon. Thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you.